And this last item is not a vintage piece of test equipment, but it is a vintage piece of audio gear or stereo equipment. All right, this is, for those of you who are not familiar with this technology, this is called a phonograph or record player. Anyways, in particular, this is a Bang & Olufsen. I recognize this right off the bat from back in the day when I worked on a lot of stereo equipment. Bang & Olufsen was a Scandinavian company, I believe, back in the 80s, maybe into the 90s. I don't even know if they're still around any longer, but they made high-end audio equipment. And it had a very unique and sleek design to it. It looked very different than a lot of the other audio equipment out there. They set themselves apart as far as styling went on their audio gear. As a matter of fact, I believe they may have been one of the first companies to ever try and make a vertical record player, or a record player that could actually play records vertically. And I believe they were also one of the first and only companies that made a stereo receiver that you could hang on the wall, almost like a work of art. Anyways, these were actually pretty pricey. They're not on the level of like Macintosh pricey, but these were pretty expensive back in the day. Whenever I can buy a decent quality turntable cheap, I tend to pick them up because there is a resurgence in the popularity of vinyl recordings. So I'm not above doing a little bit of R&R to a record player and getting it, or turntable would be a better. Record player kind of conjures up the idea of a portable unit from back in the day, whereas a standalone component like this that had to be plugged into a stereo receiver to work was more correctly referred to as a turntable. So this is pretty scratched up and dirty. This literally was sitting on a cart with a bunch of other stuff, and there was stuff piled on top of it, unfortunately. So quite a few scratches in this plastic cover, but I don't see any cracks in it, which is great. I mean, that's a miracle that this has survived this long without having it just completely broken. So I've plugged it in. There, where these two holes are, there's supposed to be a plastic badge that clicked in here, and I believe that would have said B&O on it. So it's kind of a neat looking polished or brushed aluminum. And this is not plastic, this is actually aluminum. We've got a couple of buttons here to switch from 33 RPM to 45 RPM. Believe it or not, there is actually still a cartridge and stylus on this thing. The stylus is still there. Wow. So the way this works by design, if I pick this up and move it over, it should start rotating. And it doesn't. I did hear a switch. I don't hear anything as far as noise from the motor. This button Q, this is supposed to lift and lower the... Oh, look at that. I guess you're supposed to probably bring the needle over to the platter and then probably hit Q, and it'll probably lower it onto the rotating record. I don't want to drop that needle down because of the way this platter is designed. I'm going to probably rip the stylus right off. Jeff Beck, Wired. This is a record that has been used and abused over the years. Shouldn't make that scraping noise. Well, I hear sound. If we had if I had a receiver down here I could plug this into, it might very well be working. Speed change works. Huh. Really neat. don't get it. How do you... It doesn't want to go back. Well, what do you have to... You have to bring it all the way to the end? All right, so $9 question is, why is it making that scraping noise? I wonder what holds this plat. Oh, here we go. It just sits on there like that. That's all. Cool. It's belt drive. I wonder how it's able to sense that this is on. So when I had the record off, this 45 RPM adapter pops up. There must be a switch in there, and that's what tells, that must be what tells the tone arm where it needs to go. Nope. This is pretty wild. I don't know. I can't figure out how this knows when I have a record on here. See, it's not shutting off now. It's staying on now. And when I press Q, it drops the tone arm down. I can't get it to do that operation if I take this LP off. I'm probably not doing this correctly as far as moving the tone arm when I shouldn't. I'm probably moving the tone arm when I shouldn't be, and it's throwing off the timing. So right now they should be picking up and automatically shutting off. Bet you if I keep going, you'll see how it does it now. So if I bring this back, there we go. Now it's set up perfectly right over the top. I hit Q, starts the record. Yeah, the scraping noise went away. Huh. There it is right there. There we go. All right, so now with the plastic piece off here, and I could see everything underneath here, when I spin this, I can just barely hear it rubbing. And if I touch it lightly enough, it doesn't rub at all. So then if I put a little bit of pressure on it, see it's rubbing. And I think it's rubbing this wire right here, which is actually this wire runs over here, goes to a little loop-de-loop and comes back out, and is actually a spring. Okay. And I think it's touching the underside right here. So if I push this spring down, it doesn't rub that anymore. So it rubs the spring there, just barely. But also, there's plastic posts underneath here. There's one here and here. So I think rather than try and move all those things down out of the way, I think really the key would be to just bring this up a little bit. So if I take this off, which I've got to take the belt off. The belt's going to fall off when I go to take this off. There you go. I can take this right off. I'm just thinking maybe if I had a little tiny spacer right there to bring this height up. Slightest amount. Yeah, I can just see the slightest bit of marking left behind where this has been rubbing on that plastic. Finding a washer the perfect size to fit down in that recess right there, and that'd be a long shot. Let's see. Well, I opted instead to shave off a little bit of the plastic. I used a X-Acto knife blade and was able to shave off just a little bit of plastic on each one of these. I noticed that it looked almost like maybe at the factory or during a previous repair somebody had already done that to some extent, and I figured it just needed to be done a little bit further. So let's give it a shot now. Well, not any weight on it, seems fine. I have to push down harder to make it rub at all now. Oh, the rubbing noise is gone. I just would have thought that I could manually move this over to further along. I knocked the spring out of position, and that's why it wasn't sensing, that's why the automation wasn't working correctly, so I had to take this apart again. And when I did, I happened to notice this symbol right here. I had seen this right here, okay? And this is basically talking about this right here. This is for transporting the turntable. They recommend that you lock down the mechanism to keep it from being damaged during transportation, and the way you do that is you actually step 2 is you actually bring these screws up, okay, and then slide this metal piece over so that it basically hooks underneath the head of the screw, and that helps lock this into position, okay? So this isn't floating. But the step 1, I didn't recognize what it was. It's these things around here that we're rubbing. And what these are these are made to be locked, so you can lock the turntable from turning. So at some point you have to unlock them, all right? So that's the lock position. As long as this isn't touching, that's unlocked. But if you rotate it too far, I think it could actually cause that to rub. So I think that if these are left just like this, so like this one here is way out of whack. I don't think I needed to shave the plastic at all. You see how this is? So that's the locked position, and pretty much there is unlocked. But if I rotate it too far this way, that's when that plastic starts rubbing. So I think if I just left it like that. So all right, live and learn. Who knows when the last time these things were rotated was. See? That's a working turntable. All right, I guess that's going to call it a wrap here. I hope you guys enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with some of these old electronics. And if you like what you see, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. Take care.